Hi everyone, it's Simon here with a review of Dead End Job. Dead End Job is a twin-stick shooter available on PlayStation 4, which is the version you see on your screen, but also Xbox One, PC and I believe Nintendo Switch as well. The game is for 1 to 2 players. Player 1 plays as the twin-stick shooteree, and player 2 can also get rid of some enemies as well, but plays a little bit more of a supporting role because you are a ghost. And this is a ghost hunting game. This game borrows heavily from the Ghostbusters franchise and is not ashamed about it at all. It's like Ghostbusters meets Rick and Morty, but in a twin-stick shooter. So I hope that kind of makes sense. And it sounds really good. The visuals are absolutely great and pop off the screen and are some of the best parts of the game, as well as the audio design. I thought the audio matched up with the aesthetic and the kind of vibe of the game, as well as the writing as well in the cutscenes. Although they are short and sweet, it goes for that quirky, off-the-wall, gross-out kind of vibe, and it pulls it off really well. Dead End Job though has procedural generation in its levels and in its room design, and is roguelite in the way how you unlock traits as you go through the game itself. But I'll explain kind of the gameplay loop and the mechanics involved and why it worked for me, but also why it didn't work for me in some areas as well. You start off with a character at level 1 and all of the enemies are at level 1 as well. And when you go into a new level to complete a job, and a job is to rescue survivors trapped in a haunted location, each of the rooms, the level itself is procedurally generated in layout with loads of different rooms, and then you'll go into a room and either clear the ghosts out if you need to, or you can just pick off a few and then try and get into another exit and continue on if you want. It's to your advantage to clear out the rooms as you go along, because ghosts equals cash, and cash is the main progression to get you through story mode. As you go along kind of defeating ghosts, you'll then get to the room where the survivor is in, and for that room specifically you have to always clear out every ghost that's in that room. The survivor is then freed, and then once you've cleared all the survivors you need to get back to the exit and escape that to complete the job and therefore the level. All of the ghosts that you've either defeated or collected then turn into cash. Cash then builds up in your piggy bank, and your piggy bank essentially will determine if you can get access to more difficult jobs or new locations as you progress through story mode. Now, the way how the game works in terms of progression in a roguelike sense is that when you go up against a ghost, you can either just shoot it to bits and clear it that way, or you can press square to hoover it up with your ghost hoover. And what that does is that when you've sucked up enough ghosts, that then essentially lets you level up your character, and you'll have one of 3 different traits to then unlock as you go through. That could be something like improving the accuracy of your gun or its potency. It could add a poison to it. It could mean that the cooldown on your gun, because that's the kind of main thing, is that if you shoot too much and you don't let go of the trigger button, then it will overheat and you won't be able to use it for a while. You can have it so that the cooldown takes longer, is shorter, or that the overheating kind of takes longer to get to. It could be that you're able to run faster for a while. There's also something called the written warning, which means that if you do die, you get to keep all of your traits. And that's key, because when you do die, you lose everything. Every power up and perk, you lose when you die. And this is key because for me it caused the gameplay loop to kind of flop. You don't get to keep any character progression as you go through the game, because if you die then you're back to square one. Now the game compensates that, because when you level up, the enemies level up with you, so you'll get a star rating for your character. So say you might be level 10 because you've managed to level up 10 times using your ghost hoover. The enemies will level up with you. So level 1s, they might just run towards you, and you've got 3 hearts, and if they touch you it's kind of like you lose a heart, just lose 3, game over. Then they'll start to shoot things at like level 2, 3, 4. Then when you get to like level 7, they might have like a scattergun approach, particularly if you've got like the ones where it's like 3 ice cream cones on top of each other, or like one that chases you around the room quite quickly. And so the enemies level up as you level up, so it always keeps you on your toes. The idea being that if you've got competent at the game and you've got power-ups, the enemies should be able to keep you honest as well. And that works. But when you die, they all sink back down to 1 again. The problem is that then makes the game feel a bit like a grind, because you've got to raise a certain amount of cash within 28 days, if I remember. It might be 30. And if you keep on dying, going back down to 0, you need to do a couple of like smaller jobs with the smaller difficulty to kind of get your eye back in again, get a few juicy power-ups which are completely randomised. You might just get some really crap power-ups before you ever get any good ones, which is just the nature of a random number generator. And yeah, it just kind of feels like you get really good momentum and then it strikes you down, but you have nothing to show for getting all of that good momentum forward except for your piggy bank. And then once you've unlocked everything, that's kind of it. And the problem is that a lot of the enemies, there isn't a massive selection of enemy types. What's here's good. They've got good puns, they've got good attacks, they're beautifully designed, but it's a thin amount of content spread out over a merely quite compact campaign for single player, with co-op if you want to. But yeah, it just feels like it cuts you down on purpose, and then you're like, so then when you've got like low leveled enemies to kill, then you're not making as much money, so you kind of have to get back into the gameplay loop again. So I just kind of felt like it sucked out some of the enjoyment and excitement for it. That being said though, Dead End Job is a joy to play. It plays really well, it handles well, everything kind of feels where you should go. It never feels particularly unfair, even though I mentioned that kind of cut down in your prime grind problem that it has. It never feels particularly unfair. There are some weird things kind of later on in the game, particularly when you go into like the diner location and you have to go into the refrigerated rooms and the floor is icy, and I just thought that was annoying more than being challenging. And so sometimes deaths felt a bit cheap. There was one slight technical issue that I have as well, and that seems to be a little bit around collision detection with the game. And this is if an enemy is coming at you from underneath you, so like at the bottom of the screen and you're slightly higher up, I feel like some of the character models are touching you before you visually see it. Because if they're coming down to you and coming from the top of the screen down, it's almost like there's more of a gap that way than there is underneath going up before it touches you, and therefore you lose a life. And sometimes I was losing hearts when I didn't see any visual touch from the game whatsoever. It didn't happen tons of times, to be fair, but when it did happen, I noticed it. So I was kind of a bit miffed with that. And when I was mucking about with frozen floors and skidding around, it used to be that would cause the issues, and I felt like that was a bit of a frustration. But that's just a small nitpick on something that on the whole was actually really pleasant to play and enjoyable. Whilst this isn't going to be the top twin stick shooter that will pop out and make everyone go, wow, I need and love this game and I must pick it up immediately, it's well put together, it has a great aesthetic and a great theme, a lovely chilled out vibe to it with some funny puns, and yeah, it is competently made. I'd probably recommend you grabbing this slightly reduced on price, if I'm perfectly honest, but it is a decent enough recommendation for me for short burst sessions, because you'll see everything quite quickly. So if you kind of go away and come back and go away and come back, it stays fresher that way when you play it. So thank you very much for watching. Thank you for the developer for sending across a copy for me to take a look at to review. As you've seen, it doesn't sway my judgment. If I think something is a bit kooky, I will say so. If I really like something, I say so. And this game is a real mixture of lots to like with some niggles. So yeah, any comments or questions about the game, please do leave them down below, and hope you stick with me here on Higher Plane Games for future videos. Toodles! Higher Plane Games is part of the Higher Plane Network, a collection of media projects ran by me. If you like what you see and want to find out more, visit patreon.com/Higher Plane Network. Your support can make so much more possible, be that a like, a comment, a share, or a pledge. Thanks for watching.